Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the June 9th, 2016 regular City Council meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Ms. Pazor.
Here.
Ms. Etzel.
Present.
Mr. Spinks.
Present.
Mayor Abou-Osley.
Here.
Mr. Brandt.
Here.
Mr. Sternad.
Here.
Mr. Draper.
Here.
Thank you. At this moment, we'll have a moment of silence. Thank you. We have on our agenda a presentation from the Civil Rights Commission, but I believe that the presenter is still on the way. So we're going to move on to citizen presentations or comments. Any? Yes? Please come forward and state your name and your address. Thank you.
Kay Lammers, 2820 2nd Avenue in Marion. Several months ago, in fact almost a year ago, it was announced that the library vote would be put to the people in early spring, March, whatever. Well, here we are almost halfway through June, and I don't know if it's going to a vote or not, and I'm really upset because I'd read in one of our flyers that came through the mail that we're already hiring people for the new library, two, in fact, I think. And I'm thinking, well, then why are we bothering to have a vote if you guys have already made up your minds that we're going to tear down that 20-year-old library and build a new one? Does anybody have an answer? Are we going to vote?
We haven't seen a plan yet. So there's
What
nothing
plan?
to vote. There's nothing to vote on. We have not been presented with a plan. The library board, no one's made any decisions. The library board hasn't presented a plan of what.
So why, excuse me, Your Honor, but I don't mean to start an argument, but why do we pick up the paper? One of them says we're going to have we're going to be above the grocery store. The other one says, oh no, we're not. This is all coming from the Marion Times, and then you wonder why the public is confused. And now it's, okay, we're going to have a two-story, but when you talked about it earlier, you said, well, we can't add on to the present library because we have to staff the second floor. And now we're building a two-story one and possibly a roof garden, and I'm thinking, if we can't staff the old one, why are we building a two-story new one? So when will we have an answer? We're out here, the voters are out here in limbo, actually, because
so
I
are
can't
we.
go out of the house that somebody doesn't ask me about the library.
No, and
plans
that's
for the library.
legitimate. We all wonder what's going on, but they're not ready to present a plan yet. And until there's a plan, there's nothing for us to really have an opinion on.
Well, could you maybe put that in the paper, that there's no plan? And Kim, I'm sorry about your dad.
From what we know, they're working on a plan, but there's not. I think the things were sidetracked a little bit by the search for a new director, and that wasn't anticipated. And I think they're back on track now, but we still don't have a plan that we can comment on or even have an opinion on.
But we're still talking with Ryan because that was in the last
Yes,
thing I got in the mail.
Yep.
Okay.
They're still working with
So
Ryan.
you're still contemplating a tear down.
That I don't know. But what I do know is that the library board is still going forward with plans for a new library. I mean, that is still their decision. but we haven't seen a plan. We don't know what
Well,
what their plan
if they are going ahead with plans for a brand-new library and a tear-down, why are we going to spend the money to go to a vote? Because you're going to do what you want to do anyway.
That's not true. That's just not true.
Well, what are we going to vote on then if you guys are going to
Well,
have plans to build a new library?
oh, I'm sorry. Do you have a comment?
You'd like me to comment?
Go ahead.
I think right now we're waiting for a plan to move forward, a plan to tear down, a plan not to tear down, a plan to relocate potentially, a plan to locate it in a different spot. Right now there is no plan. There is no way to vote, so there is no direction being given to the council for any of this conversation to have to occur. Now, that being said, there have been projects presented, options provided in the public. It's just like any other project that is getting planned. There are alternatives being explored. Until a direction is provided, a recommendation is given, that's when there will be a project to discuss. There's a lot of speculation going on right now because it's a real estate deal. But right now there's not a solid proposal. The committee of the council, or the committee at the library, hasn't pushed anything to the council for discussion. So I think until we have solid direction, that's when the question will come. Now, the press is going to pick up what's going on as it goes on. And we don't have control over the press. So as the projects are presented, the public information, the information on Facebook, and the information on the library website, that's the library website's the best place to keep up to date with what's going on. So that being said, I don't know that there's an answer to the questions you have, but I think they're legitimate questions that we as the city need to understand are out there and be able to present options to in the future. So maybe we need to communicate some of that where we are because it's been a while. But at this point, there's no language for a ballot, and there's not a project to point to for question and comment.
Well, I guess I was concerned, Tom, because in one of the articles, a Doug Raber quote, well, we've been working on this for about 4 years. Well, now it's 5 years.
Correct.
And you're still hanging this out there, and everybody's, you know, they still think I sit up there, and they call me and they talk to me in the store, and I'm going, I'm sorry, I don't know. Call your people up there.
And unfortunately, Kay, we're giving the same answer.
Yeah.
You know, because we, at this point in time, and until the thing is finalized and the library board is really excited about a plan, they haven't brought it here. So I would give the same answer that you're giving and saying, hey, guys, I really don't know at this point. You know.
Thank you.
And people ask me the question all the time. And my answer is I can't comment, I can't have an opinion on something I haven't seen. You know, when we all have the same plan in front of us, then we can all talk about it and have opinions on it. Until then, you know, I can't form an opinion on something I haven't seen. And one thing that I have expressed, though, is that we need to make sure that whatever it is, whatever the plan is, we need the time to have a community conversation about it. However that happens, we need to have the time to be able to have the conversation about it. So
Thank you.
that's all I can say right now, but I don't know if the library director who's here would like to comment at all.
Sure, thank you. I would just want to let you know that the library is very ready to communicate a plan when we have a full plan to communicate. I think we learned as a community some things about the last iteration where possibly more detail was given before it was finalized, and that's added to this community narrative and speculation, which is very natural, and I understand where it's coming from. So I just want to encourage you and others to come right to the library with questions, and we're happy to walk you through what we know now, but we're also going to be very conscientious of not revealing possible plans as fact, which will add to the conversation. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments, sir?
Good afternoon. My name is Charles Knutson. I live at 2835 24th Avenue, Marion, Iowa. I think you all know who I am. I brought a couple things to the council, and I'm basically here today just to ask what the status of my requests are. The first one is the election code regarding ward seats. You know what my questions are. I made them they've been also in the Marion Times as well as in Cedar Rapids Gazette.
Yes, I saw.
And I'm just kind of waiting on this council to give a response. I would appreciate one as soon as possible so I know exactly what road I need to take. The second thing is, you received a letter last week from me in regard to some parking on 8th Avenue over by the First Presbyterian Church. I feel the city is in violation of the city code the way they painted it. The city code requires a 50-foot parking stall in front of the church. State code says 30 to 50, but the Marion, when they wrote their code, specifically said 50 feet. You made it 30 feet. You also screwed up the handicap entrance off the street to the sidewalk. So if you could give me a response on that as soon as possible, I'd appreciate it also. Any questions?
We have to rely on staff to respond to you on that. I mean, we're not the experts, but
TAC is evaluating it. That hasn't put together a report yet.
okay.
Okay. Right now,
Thank
you're
you.
making it difficult for some people to get up the sidewalk. Thank you.
Anybody else? Sir.
Craig Campbell, 1062 7th Avenue, beautiful historic Marion, Iowa. Councilwoman Edsel suggested that I may want to say a couple of words in support of a petition that I submitted maybe a week or so ago from North Side Uptown business owners. I'm here in a very narrow capacity because I have, as you know, many opinions about lots of different things, but I was not deputized by my fellow business owners to hold forth on that, but I would like to just say a few words in support very specifically of our petition to close 7th Avenue between 12th Street and 10th Street during all public events being held uptown in the park. I can tell you that I went to everyone who has a business on the north side of 7th Avenue and then turning the corners up 10th and 11th. And then I also went across 12th, a little bit kind of out of the range of what we're talking about to hit Volleyball, Chocolate, and Fashion Par. Everybody was unanimously excited about the prospect of closing the street. There were no negative comments. There were several, I can't believe it's taken so long comments, and that one would be one that I would echo as well, 24 years, maybe a little late on this one. We see uptown activities, public activities, very specifically public activities, as being commercial development activities. Certainly that's not all they are, but that's the way we envision them as uptown business owners, and we would greatly appreciate the opportunity to be rid of the moat of traffic that separates our businesses from hundreds and hundreds of people that are in the uptown at a particular time when they are not uptown otherwise. Again, I'm here for a very singular reason, so I don't know if I can answer too many questions other than experience of asking for signatures on this.
May I answer to this? Several years ago, I requested that during the art fair that 7th Avenue be closed between 10th and 12th, but this is when there was parking behind the park, and that was available. I went up and counted parking places. You would be removing between 30 and 35 parking spots, and I don't know if you've noticed, but an awful lot of those folks that use those parking places are a little bit older than, say, 40, and they don't have, if they can't park close, they won't go. So you're not gaining anything by eliminating those parking places.
If I could respond to that, there's no question about what you said as being a structural fact. But another fact is that all of the business owners, and when I say business owners, just to clarify that petition a little bit, it's kind of people like Priscilla and me, so it's like a bar, a restaurant, a retail store. I didn't go to insurance offices, that kind of thing on the north side. I went to things that would maybe be open, business hours. But I can tell you, Ms. Pazur, that every business owner who I guarantee you has a very deep stake in access of potential customers to our stores, every business owner was perfectly fine with being rid of all vehicles on 7th during those periods.
I think you're mistaken. I really, only because this is what I hear is, if I can't park close enough, I'm not going.
When you say I'm mistaken, if somebody signed the petition,
Well,
there's no mistake that can be made.
But you didn't get the people that would be using the parking places. Now, if my plan, over here, a ramped parking place was built, and the one on 8th Avenue, that would provide wonderful parking, and then, fine, but people have got to have someplace to park.
So this is on the agenda tonight to receive and file your petition, and then at that point, that would trigger a staff review of it and a recommendation, and, we'll go from there.
Excellent. I do know that people would be excited to hear any responses. When I say people, the people that signed the petition. Hear some responses, questions, the opportunity to meet, maybe with council. We were all quite excited about the prospect.
Okay.
I had one item, Craig. I found out things don't happen in a great deal of a rush in city. I see some value once 6th is open of that working a lot more smoothly. Because if we close 7th, the problems we have right now with 6th, I don't know where the people are going to go. So I see value in what you're saying with the people, and I wasn't asked about your petition, but
You're on the south.
yeah. I'm a downtown person. I think that it's going to take some while to balance that out. I tried 2 years ago to have a car show downtown and close 7th and park all the cars along 7th and in the park, and was told that I couldn't do that, which is fine. I think eventually we'll be able to do that, but give us some time on it. We don't have a whole lot of events left other than Thursday nights, I know, but be patient.
Can I respond to that just
I have
briefly?
one question
Oh, I'm sorry.
for you, Craig.
Go ahead, Joe.
Have you talked to the folks like Tomaso's and all those in the horse?
The only people that I approached and the only people that signed are people north of 7th Avenue
North of 7th.
that are directly impacted by the
Yeah, so
highway.
you haven't talked to any of those folks at
Well,
all?
I don't see it as being those that.
Well,
that's
but I mean,
not-
if you close that, they won't have any access to their parking lot that they have there.
My guess is they would have access.
They would?
Well, I don't see something happening where you close off all approach to an entire group of people that weren't even asked about the proposal. So you would look at that and you would say, all right, well, we're going to do this, but how do we also get people in there? And you would just take a half lane, you'd bring them, I don't know. I mean, that's engineering, and you can do anything if
Right,
that's
so
your goal.
The city staff has to look at it and then come back with a proposal, whether or not they recommend it, or if it works, or if there's any issues. I mean, we may not be able to close down a highway. I mean, it's a highway, right?
Yes.
I don't know if we have the authority to do that, but they will look at that. You filed the petition to that, and then we'll receive and file it tonight, and then that will trigger the staff review, who are the professionals, and they will let us know what the issues with it are, if it's a good idea or not, whether they recommend it or not, and then we can then have more discussion on it. And
Perfect.
yep. And
Good.
at some point, I'm sure there'll be an opportunity to talk more about it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Craig.
So will this directly go to TAC now? You think?
What happens when this gets received and filed? It goes to TAC?
The motion needs to refer it to TAC. I don't know if the motion on the agenda does or not.
No,
but-
it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Should we
So when that comes up, we can, yeah, okay. Any other citizen comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll go back in the agenda to our presentation. Was Sheila? Sheila Yates.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is LaSheila Yates. I'm the Executive Director of the City of Cedar Rapids Civil Rights Commission. I'm also the City of Cedar Rapids Chief Diversity Officer. And so my presentation today is going to focus on the lawful source of income per request, and to provide any additional answer any additional follow-up questions, as well as if there's something that perhaps has a legal implication, to make sure that that's clear, or a policy implication that's clear, so your staff can be abreast to that. But if there are any questions that I'm unable to answer, I'll make sure to make note of that and work with Amanda to get those questions answered.
Your setup is a bit different.
Okay, thank you. Just to kind of frame up our role as a Cedar Rapids Civil Rights Commission, we are a neutral fact-finding agency and an enforcement agency. We offer mediation services to resolve complaints. It's no monetary cost to parties to file a complaint with our agency. The Cedar Rapids Civil Rights does not advocate or represent either party during the process. The definition of lawful source of income means any lawful, verifiable source of income paid directly or indirectly to or on behalf of a renter or buyer of a house. And so there is a list of some of the things that we would consider. And so any lawful source of income could be perceived as any lawful profession, occupation, any government or private assistance program, subsidy, voucher, grant, or loan program, any gift, inheritance, pension, child support, and any sale of pledge of property in the interest of the property. And so some of the areas that lawful source of income that we typically see would be, one thing I do want to state is that the Cedar Rapids Civil Rights Commission does not have lawful source of income as a protected class at this time. The Iowa City Civil Rights Commission does, and the state of Iowa does not. And so getting back to lawful source of incomes, it's public assistance, child support, veterans benefits, workers' compensation can be considered, Social Security benefits, and the Section 8 housing choice voucher, which is commonly known as Section 8. Here are some sources, places where lawful source of income is a protection: California, Connecticut, District of Columbia, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Jersey, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Oregon, Utah, Vermont, and Wisconsin. And here is, I feel like I overlooked one. Here is a list of the cities that, by population, that do have lawful source of income as a protected class. And so when our commission is looking to bring forth any type of recommendation, or if there's a staff review that we bring to our commission and commission chair, then what we do is we typically benchmark against Iowa City, Des Moines, Davenport, St. Paul, Minnesota. We also benchmark against the state because really the state kind of serves as a really good baseline. Another agency we benchmark again is Des Moines. The state is located in Des Moines, the State Civil Rights Commission, but Des Moines also has a separate Civil Rights Commission. And so some of the protected classes that are covered include age, creed, mental disability, physical disability, familial status, so families with children under the age of 18, gender identity, lawful source of income, marital status, national origin, race, religion, gender, and sex, and sexual orientation. One thing I do want to know, some of these items, because of a relationship that we do have with HUD and also the Iowa Civil Rights Commission, the State Commission, we're unable to investigate those cases because it is problematic for our contract that we have with those agencies. And so, for example, if there's a housing case based on race, we will refer that case to either HUD or to the Iowa Civil Rights Commission. The reason being so is that our agency is substantially equivalent and the Marion Civil Rights Commission is not at this time. And so in the amended 28E agreement, it outlines exactly which specific cases that we have the authority to investigate. And so with lawful source of the income, it's considered unfair to alter the terms and condition of a rental sale, to make, print, or publish any notice, statement, or advertisement that indicates that any preference or limitation of a prospective buyer or renter is based on lawful source of income, to represent that someone that a dwelling, which could be a rental unit or a single-family household, is not available when it actually is, so that it's actually unlawful. And so under the Marion Code, with regard to lawful source of income, individuals cannot be steered toward or away from a specific property or neighborhood because of their lawful source of income. And in general, refusal to allow a reasonable accommodation. That usually deals with our disability cases. And so that would be a case that we would refer to HUD, but just as information to know. Also, there are design and construction requirements. So if a housing or structure or facility does not comply with accessibility requirements, or if it's newly designed and constructed multifamily dwelling, then if there's a violation, and that would be a Fair Housing Act violation. So we would then refer that to HUD because our agency wouldn't be able to file that, and it's in breach of our contract. And so one area that I guess is usually the question that we get is, what about rent subsidies? What about voucher? What about the Section 8 program? Is that covered in the Marion Ordinance? Yes, it is. And so it basically is that any individual who receives federal, state, or local housing subsidy, including Section 8 rent assistance, because the individual is such a recipient of those funding, because of any requirements of rent assistance and housing subsidy or a voucher program, it is unlawful to fail you to rent to those individuals. And also in association with the person that has a voucher. For example, there may be a family member that's receiving some type of voucher through the Section 8 program, and say that for whatever reason their parent or family member took ill and would like to have their voucher transferred to a particular property, so they can actually, because it's called portability, and so they can actually port to a specific rental unit. And so what this says is that based on association, if that family member needs the voucher to help subsidize their rent in the event that there's a need to address healthcare issues, that should not be a reason to deny a person based on disability. Well, that would probably be two issues, disability and rent assistance, but since we're talking about rent assistance, I will stay with that. And so, as far as with verifying, this is the piece that, really when a landlord or a housing provider, one thing I would definitely say, if you're seeking to rent to an individual or sell a property, or if you're engaged in a housing transaction, it's always a best practice to have some type of policy in place for doing so that you have some guidelines for treating everyone fairly or equally, and it's not based on a protected class status. And so for a housing provider, they shall consider and may verify any lawful source of income or an occupation in determining qualifications for rent and sale of the dwelling. And so when a person goes through this process, and I can particularly speak to Section 8 because I managed the program for Lynn and Benton County for close to 4 years prior to accepting this position, is they usually know about how much they can spend for a rental property. And so what a housing provider can do is ask, can I verify a copy of your voucher if they've gotten to that point where they're verifying income. But what they cannot outright say is, I don't care if you have Section 8, I'm not taking your source of income. And so it's always, when whatever your policy outlines as the process for verifying income, that's when that information is more likely should be considered. And so a housing provider should not be required to rent or sell to a participant in a housing subsidy program merely because they have a subsidy. It does not create a preference for persons that have a Section 8 voucher. At the end of the day, if you have a standard for credit worthiness, based criminal background history, those are things, if they're within your scope of review, if there are standard requirements and you apply them equally, that's more likely than not a legitimate non-discriminatory business reason. Also, if the family cannot afford to pay the rent, even with a subsidy, then that would be something that would be considered possibly as a reasonable non-discriminatory business case. But the reason why I say it may be considered, there may be other factors that have transpired between the time the person walks through the door and actually starts filling out an application. And so that's why I say it could be. And so you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. And so a housing provider shall not refuse to accept or participate in a government housing subsidy program, except as were provided elsewhere in this section. It must consider and evaluate the individuals who participate in the program along with the other individuals and applicants. Again, whatever the approach is, if you say, hey, no more than 3 criminal background checks within criminal convictions within the last 3 years, then it should be spelled out somewhere, or you should be able to show that in your practice that you're not discriminating. And this is why. Because what happens is when our agency comes and do an investigation, we're going to look through a lot of your files, because if you say, well, hey, there's not a policy, and so then our next approach is to look at your practice. And that could be a very long process. And so, having your policy that we can match up against your practice, it really helps out. And so a housing provider may refuse to consider income just basically if it comes from any criminal activity. So it's a not lawful source of income. It's illegal source of income.
so you're not required to do so. Determine the eligibility of any potential buyer or renter or purchase, just verifying the source, the amount, and the potential buyer. So it's just, still it gets to that verification piece. There are a lot of slides in here that, and I don't know how much time do I have? Mayor, is there a certain set time that you have for me to present?
Do you have a lot left, or?
I have a little bit left, but I can focus on the ones, basically the remainder of the slides just affirm where at in the section of the code where these items are located.
Okay.
And so if someone has a question about it, then they can know where to go in the code to find that.
I think it would be good if we had a chance to ask questions.
Okay.
And then, if after that you see that there's need to keep going with your presentation, that's fine. But also, maybe we can get it in. Can we get that printed and distribute it to the council?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. The reason I say that because I can get a bit long-winded.
Well.
But you do not. You're gonna listen through this and then me giving a long-winded answer, which I'm working on.
This isn't.
So I definitely would like to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions?
Okay, so basically, if somebody says, I had to rob that bank to pay my rent, you're not going to rent to that person.
That's based on what I understand, that sounds like an illegal source of income.
Thank you.
And so one thing, they may consider some housing providers look through the newspaper or look through the newspaper to see if this person has been committed of some type of crime. If it's a current tenant, I know even in Section 8 Rent Assistance Program, we would look through the newspaper, we would work with the police department to verify that someone's not engaging in a criminal activity and has a conviction.
Do you have access to police departments as far as finding out if there is criminal activity involved?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If somebody's been arrested, that's public information. Plus you go on Courts Online.
Yep.
So.
Okay.
So Courts Online would do the same thing, but if she called the police department, anyone in Marion wants to call the police department and check on someone to find out, if they've been arrested for illegal criminal activity, we will let them know.
Okay.
And so this is when I was working with the Section 8 Rent Assistance Program. So we really work closely to try to figure out a way to, we understand that most individuals, and I'll say the majority of individuals, they didn't commit crime. They got off the program because of good standing. I think it was a relatively small amount based on criminal background history. It may have been like 20 individuals a year, if that. And considering that we have, we were allocated or allowed to have up to 1,265 families, but we usually have anywhere between 1,200 and 11,000 families. And I shouldn't be speaking on behalf of our Section 8 Rent Assistance Program, but that I work there, so.
We have a couple council members with questions, so.
Yeah, should I go ahead?
Go ahead.
I have a couple. Do you know if you've ever had any complaints that were referred to HUD from Marion?
For this, we started tracking that in January, and I think we may have had a total of 5 between maybe the Iowa Civil Rights Commission and HUD, but it was based on areas that we have a complaint with. We have not had a complaint filed based on lawful source of income, at least since my tenure with the commission, and I've been there almost 2 years. Okay. And so as far as with stats, we closed 5 cases between June of 2015 and June of 2016 for the Marion Civil Rights Commission. Between that same time frame, we have had no complaints that were filed with our commission that were, no one has filed a complaint since then.
Joe?
One
Oh,
thing,
I'm sorry.
one more. One thing that they're worried about, that we've heard from renters, is the recourse if there's damage done to their apartments. Do you see if there's any way to, whatever their approach is, you said in their practice, like in a contract, is there any way to put anything in that contract that could help them recoup that money? I think that's what they're really worried about.
I would say that individual should work with their attorney, because there is the Iowa, landlord and tenant law, and there are certain provisions in there. And so from a civil rights aspect, I don't feel comfortable providing a recommendation, because there may be something included within those policies to recoup, if they're looking to recuperate damages, that may have an adverse impact on individuals. So my recommendation, I would say recommendation, but if they have an attorney, they need to work with their attorney on those issues, because those are covered under landlord-tenant law.
Joe?
Yeah, thank you for coming today and talking to us. But this came up because one of the landlords actually came and asked us about Section 8. And the thing that they were complaining about with it was is what Kim was talking about, is that renters or whatever in Section 8 programs were leaving the apartments trashed, and that there was no way for them to recoup the money, because the government won't reimburse them for those damages. And so my question is if those people that are doing that have a record of leaving apartments that way, is there an out? If a person is in the Section 8 program, can they deny a person renting in their apartment or whatever? Is there a way to deny that? Because I can see that the landlords are out that money to do that. I mean, they're a business, and so is there a way to not rent to those people?
I would say, again, if it is, I was asking, my question would be, what is your normal business practice? If a person didn't have a job and they were receiving veterans assistance, would you then go to the VA or some other entity to try to get that money back if they trashed the place?
Well, I'm just saying, say they got it one time and said, and so they did a background check on the next person and they had left an apartment the same way. Can they deny a Section 8 application because of that?
I would say if it is based on Section 8, based under your current ordinance, no. But if it's based on something that came up through the judicial system or something that came up, say a previous landlord went after them for damages, then that would probably be a legitimate business reason not to rent to them. Oh, the person damaged the apartment. I saw that through the application process, so I'm not renting because they don't have a good rental history. And so that's just it's a business decision. But when you talk about specifically because there's a Section 8 rent assist, they have a voucher, there's no correlation between the likelihood of the family trashing the place in comparison because they have a voucher and not. Actually, it's about 51 or 52 individuals on a Section 8 program has at least one family member with a disability. And so that process for determining whether or not they should no longer stay in the program, if the owner makes them aware of it, it makes them aware of, hey, I'm filing with the Linn County Court, here's my information, then for the Section 8 part of it, we would do they would do what's called an informal hearing, where a neutral person will serve as the hearing officer and render a decision. And at that point, did we follow our rules? So it's kind of like they're mediating between both parties. Our not our, but the Section 8 program, did they follow their rules? Did they have enough documentation to prove that this occurred to kick them off the program? And also, what documentation that either a landlord, which could possibly serve as a witness in that capacity, and what information do they have, and what information does the complainant have? Because they're basically telling us, no, we need to stay on, or telling Section 8, we want to stay on our housing program, and we didn't do anything that was severe or pervasive.
We have some input here.
Yes, thank you, Council Mayor. My name is Devin Kelly. I'm the Assistant City Attorney for Marion. I also oversee the Marion Civil Rights Commission. I want to just add a few words to your question, Councilman Spinks. Your question was, if there is a previous record, does the landlord have a right to refuse a rent? Yes. They have a right to say, we will not rent to you based on your prior history. The lawful source of income language does not change any of the terms of the contract. If there's a prior bad history of renting, if there is not enough income to meet the formula for rent to income, you can deny on that as well. It just simply says when taking a look at the pool of funds that the renter or buyer has, you cannot say, well, we're not going to count your veterans' benefits as income. We're not going to count your child support as income. You have to do that, but everything else stays the same.
So it does impact the terms of a sale.
The terms of the sale?
If they're selling real estate, that's one of the concerns they expressed.
Okay.
The landlords who spoke to us.
Do you have?
It limits the terms that they can put in their contract, the terms by which they determine they want to sell their property under.
Okay.
I think it was they were concerned that they can't require a cash sale.
The issue of if you could use the word cash or not would possibly be in what cash means. Generally, though, when the University of Iowa Law Clinic addressed this, they found that there were frankly no. Once these type of laws were adopted, they saw no difference in the manner of business. If you were to say, I'm looking to sell on contract, that's a term of sale that it doesn't matter. How to say this? The source of income that you will be using for that contract is what you can't consider, as long as it is a lawful source of income. You can say, I'm not going to sell on contract, or I'm only going to sell on contract. If you say, I'm going to sell on cash, well, I'm assuming that whether someone has cash from VA benefits, from unemployment benefits, child support, that cash is likely green as well and can be used to pay that monthly rent.
Oh, yeah, could be.
It just looks at the underlying source of that money.
Okay.
Another thing they brought up too was if you have two purchase contracts, one's cash for $100,000, one's an FHA loan for $102,000, but they take the cash. Is it lawful source of income? They're discriminating against this one because it's a FHA or government loan versus cash. See what I'm saying there?
Yes,
Okay.
and more likely than not, the answer would be it's not discrimination because there's not a preference created. And frankly, that example is very likely unlikely to occur.
Right.
Everyone, when has bought a house, realizes that there's probably 100 different variations, closing dates, amount down, things of that nature. So in that sort of static world, there's potentially a clever attorney would say, yes, it is, but more likely than not, because the law does not create a preference for those benefits, the answer would still be no. And again, that's a situation that's just not likely to occur.
I have one more question. Are Section 8 renters exempt from making deposits? Because anybody that rents, you have to make deposits. And then that goes towards any damage that occurs while the person is renting.
I would say the Section 8 program, the deposit is made out of their own funds. So we don't have, through the Section 8 program, there's not a deposit
requirement?
Requirement, no, because
Okay.
it's based on where the person chooses and wants to live. What happens when a person has a voucher and their income matches well with the housing provider, then those, their rents go directly to the owner of the home. And if there's, say, for example, for some reason, I've seen where there's an accommodation allowed for a person, say that they need an additional bedroom, and it requires maybe them to put in 10% more because their kid has a disability, then that family may be able to contribute some of their additional monies, if that makes sense, to make the rent payment. But a lot of these families, have jobs. They're working individuals. They're trying to figure out a way to use this income to subsidize while they're going through kind of this point in time. And one thing I'll say, it's been consistent that the average stay of a Section 8 participant is about a little over 3 years. And so there is some turnover in the program.
Thank you.
Why did the Cedar Rapids City Council not adopt lawful source of income?
Remove it.
I wasn't there at the time, so I'm assuming for whatever reason the council made a decision not to accept it.
Just curious.
And so I really couldn't honestly speak to that. I just can't.
Yeah,
I was actually working for the program at the time, but I wasn't working in the enforcement arm.
Thanks. Any other questions?
I had only one. How does a landlord, I'm not worried about somebody buying a house, I think the lender will take care of that, but how does a landlord substantiate the information they're given? And I think what I'd be most familiar with is workman's comp was listed. And I know how guarded insurance companies are in allowing anybody to know what their reserves are, what they think they're going to be paying. And a lot of times they're retraining those people at Kirkwood or somewhere to have another profession. How does a landlord substantiate that information?
Through that verification process, they should identify what sources they would look at, and I would think to include if they have a criminal background component to it, what does that look like, how many years you're going to go back. They should have some, how can I put this? They should have some business sense in going into housing providers. And I know that's not the case with a lot of individuals, because some individuals, it's just one home that's here, and maybe they've retired and want to go to another location. But I would say a good resource, and I would always recommend it, whether people like it or not, is the landlords of Linn County. And so they have some of those standard forms, and can provide some information about how to do business as a housing provider. And so I would say that, one, they probably want to get an attorney to make sure what they're looking to, I guess, to verify the information is something that's not illegal, but also work with a group like the Landlords of Linn County so they can get some best practices. I mean, we did a presentation for Fair Housing Month about service animals and emotional support and companion animals at the April Landlords of Linn County meeting. They didn't have to invite us, but they do every April.
Councilman Draper, if I could also just add one more bit to that question, and how they would verify, say, something like workman's comp. People who are renting or selling to individuals who are receiving workers' compensation are already doing that. They have already found ways to verify income. So, to say that this is sort of a new, well, how would they start to verify your unemployment benefits or unemployment insurance, child support? People who are receiving those kinds of assistance are already renting and having to verify that. I guess I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how they do that, but I'm assuming, I'm not assuming, I know that people who are receiving these assistance are already doing that, and landlords are already asking for it. It just says that it gives the landlord a protection to say, okay, just show me the paperwork. But I'm assuming they're already doing that.
Because some of those things aren't forever. Disability isn't forever. Workman's comp is not forever. And it could be here and they may be off of it next week, then to me, that would be a problem. I don't own any rental property, I'm glad to say, but I don't know how you know that you're being told the truth. That's what and you're helping, but.
Sure, and that would be correct, but then if you were on unemployment benefits, say for 9 months, and at the end of that you were off benefits, you would no longer meet the terms of the contract. If you fall outside of that income ratio to rent ratio, you don't meet the terms of the contract anymore. So it's not a situation where once you are renting or selling to someone who's receiving veterans benefit that you're now and obligated to continue to sell or rent to them because the terms of the contract are still in effect.
And one thing you want to consider as well, that source of income may fall off, but another source of income may come into effect.
Very well.
And so one thing you want to consider, am I going to verify every person's income annually to make sure that I have the same process in place? Because a person that's receiving such benefits could say, well, at the end of the day, you asked about my assistance and how I'm going to pay, but did you ask such and such that works at the bakery down the street? No, I feel like I'm being treated differently in the terms and conditions of my lease. And so if that is the case, then if you're going to verify it, unless they blatantly aren't paying rent, in which there's a process based on the Iowa landlord-tenant law, you might want to just be careful with something like that. But, Devin Kelly is your city attorney, so I'm just putting some scenarios out there, but he can provide the legal guidance.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it may be helpful to have a meeting with these concerned landlords where you're there to help answer these questions that they have. Have we done that? Has the commission?
At this point, I believe at the commission meetings that I've attended, we've had some representatives come and share their expressed concerns. Many of them were repeated here this evening. As for a meeting specifically between individuals, I'm not aware of one. That's something that obviously the commission should probably want to consider doing. But there is plenty of written studies that were done for the city of Cedar Rapids. I actually have them here today that we also could provide to them to address any issues that they may have.
Okay. Because, I mean, to them, in their mind, they have legitimate concerns. And so I think whatever we can do to help, address those concerns, they want to know how certain situations would be treated and, make sure that they're not
in violation of,
right,
unintentionally in violating something.
Exactly.
Absolutely, and that's a valid concern.
Right. So I think to the extent we can help alleviate some of those concerns and answer their questions, that'd go a long ways, I think. Was there anything else in your presentation you wanted to share that you think would be important, or?
No, actually, I think that covers it all. I think
Okay.
the dialogue and just providing some clarification is important. And
This was very helpful.
Thank you. No problem. And I'll make sure that I get Amanda a copy of these, the PowerPoint.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll see how I can get out of here.
Okay, moving on to the consent calendar. Consent calendar.
Yes, Your Honor, I make a motion to approve consent calendar as presented. This will be items number 1 through 30, with the exception of 29. This will to...
29, I think, is
He said
okay.
we could clear it.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, we're going to address it, though, to TAC.
Okay, I would also like to add 21.
Okay?
Remove 21?
Clarification, this will be to approve consent calendar as presented, numbers 1 through 30, with the exception of 29 and 21. This will also include resolutions number 25353 through 25374, and also including 25328.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented with the exceptions of numbers 21 and 29. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. 21? Do you want to?
I'll do 20. Should I do 29 first? Yes, Your Honor, this will be to make a motion to approve number 21. Motion to receive and file correspondence from Kim D. Smith regarding request for City Council to consider an ordinance that would ensure front yards could not be used as a parking or storage area in resident areas.
It's been moved and seconded to receive and file correspondence from Kim D. Smith regarding the consideration of an ordinance to ensure front yards could not be used as parking or storage areas in residential areas. Discussion?
Well, in conjunction with this, after this passes, which I'm sure it will, I want to move that we direct staff to prepare an ordinance so that this doesn't get lost in the shuffle and it moves forward.
Any other discussion?
But that's not a second because it hasn't been voted on yet.
Okay,
And
so
just, I'm sorry, Your Honor, just as clarification too, staff does and has been instructed to further pursue that. I believe you were absent at that discussion on Tuesday.
Aha.
Correct.
Clarification.
That was, you did that after I left, didn't you?
It's actually on
Thinking about you.
It's on the agenda. If you look at number 22 is directing us to proceed. So.
Okay. Thank
Yep.
you.
okay, so we'll proceed to vote on this. All those in favor of the motion to receive and file the correspondence from Kim D. Smith, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Number 29.
Yes, Your Honor, this is to approve consent calendar number 29, motion to receive and file a petition requesting to close 7th Avenue between 10th Street and 12th Street to vehicular traffic during the public events. Craig Campbell and various Marion business owners north of 7th Avenue.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to receive and file petition requesting the closure of 7th Avenue between 10th and 12th Streets to vehicular traffic during all public events. Discussion.
I think at this time, Your Honor, I would like to make motion that we address that and forward it on to TAC.
Okay. So we'll receive and file, and then as part of the motion, address it to TAC? Is that correct?
Yeah, just part of the motion needs to include it to refer it to TAC.
Okay.
To make to modify it.
Good. I have a question, Your Honor. As Craig gone, are we talking only about the north side of 7th Avenue, or are we talking about 7th Avenue? The petition was all from the north siders, and he's listed as a business owner north side of 7th Avenue. Are we talking about closing parking on both sides or just one?
I think the
Closing
request
7th
is for curb to curb.
Closing all of
Curb to
7th
curb?
Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
My question is, do we want to address this now, or do we want to wait and address this in the future when 6th is actually finished and we could close 7th Avenue?
Well, I think this is just receiving and filing and
Correct,
referring
right.
it, and it will, I mean, you know, in my opinion, we should have the professionals look at it and give us a recommendation. Maybe part of the recommendation would be wait until 6th Avenue is finished. Who knows? Maybe they think it's okay. I don't, you know, but let them look at it and give us their recommendation.
Agreed.
Okay. So, do we need to amend that motion then?
I would
Move to amend your
believe
motion
so,
to
yes.
refer
So
to TAC.
I will make a motion to amend number 29 to modify and send to TAC.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to amend the motion to add that we refer it to TAC. Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment to the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Okay, now we have the amended motion. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor of the amended motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Thank you. Councilman Draper?
Yes, Your Honor. I have, to continue with the consent calendar, motion to approve with our mayor, Abu Asli, abstaining voting and discussing for business reason or those who may think it's a business reason, the following cigarette permit applications for fiscal year 16 and 17. And I'm not going to read all of those in essence of time, Your Honor.
There are other motions on there.
Pardon me? Yes. Well, do you want to vote on all of them at once or one at a time?
All at once.
Okay. Yep. Further, the motion to approve the project calendar regarding engineering department payments as follows. Resolution 25-375 approving partial payment number 1, Genesis Equity LLC, per previously passed Resolution 25-219 regarding the environmental cleanup of the Marion Iron site associated with the Central Corridor Project, 26th Street through 31st, in the amount of $51,250. Resolution number 25-376 approving partial payment number 1 to LL Pelling Company Incorporated regarding the 2016 HMA resurfacing project in the amount of $564,061.11, and Resolution 25-377 approving partial payment number 33 to Martin Gardner Architectural and Professional Service related to the downtown facade revitalization program in the amount of $1,750.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the motion to approving the cigarette permits applications and resolution numbers 25375, 25376, and 25377. Discussion?
Yes, sir. I would like to remove the A part of number 32 because I know that we just paid them $199,000 for part of this remediation, and I also know that we received federal money at one time, and I would kind of like an accounting of this whole thing as to the actual amounts.
Ken?
Yeah, Your Honor. Actually, what council did was concur with a contract for $199,000 between Abode and Genesis. This actually $51,250 is the total amount to be paid for that concurrence of contract. What was estimated to cost almost $200,000 actually only cost $51,250.
So then you're totally voiding that $199,000.
That was just a concurrence of contract. It was not a payment.
Well, yeah, but if you say I concur with paying $199,000 and then you don't say cancel that, then wait a minute. We're talking about a few bucks here.
You're under contract. You're currently under contract to pay up to $200,000 for the cleanup. However, this will be the only bill that you will receive.
This does mention it's payment number 1, and that pays it in its entirety of the original resolution 25-219. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
I'll hold you to that, Willow.
If I could make a comment on that, I mean, I think it's important to note that was for the environmental cleanup of Marion Iron.
Right.
And it was estimated at $200,000.
Right.
In working with the Department of Natural Resources, we actually had the gentleman from the state come to the site and do the testing himself. This project's been a huge project for many, many years, and I think it was really a neat opportunity that the state was so aware of what was going on in Marion with this project and the cleanup of the site, they came down, they brought their own equipment, which we generally have to rent, pay for, and then have experts in the field use. He came down because he wanted to be one of the guys that helped close out this project. So he came down, we did a bunch of testing on site, and thankfully, some of the things that we thought we were going to have to do, which would include probably more than the 200,000, but we just didn't know. That was just an estimate we could throw at it to see, because we don't know the results until you start digging. And once the analysis was completed on site, it was determined that there would be little to no impact to the ground that is there. So we were allowed to cap the property, which is a huge, huge deal for us.
Okay, well, actually, this is good that this is coming out because nobody knew about it.
Well, that's why I wanted to make a point to say it once it was a conversation
Good
piece.
show.
But so it's been that's been a very, I mean, I think that's good for the council to know, good for the public to know, and the DNR has been on our side on this project from the get-go. They wanted to see that property cleaned up, and I think it's a good feather in the hat of the city to get it done.
But did we not receive Fed money on that? A long time ago.
We've received over $1.5 million over the last 15 years for assessment and cleanup of this corridor.
Okay.
We've received a lot of federal dollars in this project.
So where is the remainder of that?
This was for the Marion Iron site, not the railroad right-of-way, which is what we received money
I mean,
for.
total central corridor railroad property. We've got filing cabinets full of assessments that we've been able to go on to and assist with property owners who have properties that may be perceived to be contaminated, that we've been able to provide phase 1 and phase 2 documentation for, so that if they have a property that is perceived to be a brownfield, we can pull out a document that says we've done the work to certify that it's not, which helps and aids in the sale of the property for redevelopment.
Basically, then, what you have explained is the use of those funds received and how it was used, and there is nothing untowards on this, and it's all legal.
Correct, yeah. Yep.
Wouldn't do it if it
I think
wasn't.
Genesis should be commended, Tom, in a way, because they cleaned that up a great deal before they came in to inspect. They cleaned a lot of dirt out. I'll grant you they got a lot of metal out of there they could sell, but they did a lot of cleanup work in there before that was fully inspected, so that was
Absolutely.
good.
Yep.
Okay. Are you okay?
I'm fine. It can go forward now. Thank you.
Any other discussion on those items? Okay. All those in favor of the motion to approve the second part of the consent calendar, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. And I abstain.
Okay, Your Honor, I move to approve the initial consideration of Ordinance 16-06, amending Section 5.13 of the Code of Ordinances regarding place of residence for certain city employees.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 16-06, amending section 5.13 of the Code of Ordinances regarding the place of residence for certain city employees. Discussion.
This basically, I think, covers the time as opposed to the distance.
Chief?
It covers both.
So that it's to the city's best interest.
Yes, to,
Okay.
Chief Cable, on this, just for clarification, I know there's been some discussion. All individuals at this point would be grandfathered prior to this?
there would be no need to grandfather anyone
Very good.
on our department.
Very
I
good.
don't know
Okay.
about other
Everyone will be in
departments.
compliance.
Thank you.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor of approving ordinance number 16-06, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Okay, motion passes. At this time, we have a public hearing regarding the 2016 sidewalk assessment project. The public hearing is now open. Do we need to have a presentation or anything? Or no? Okay. Is there anyone here in the audience who's here to speak in favor of the sidewalk assessment project? Okay, is there anyone here to speak against the sidewalk assessment project? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed.
Yes, I move to approve resolution number 25378, accepting bids and awarding contract to Boris Brothers Construction Incorporated regarding the 2016 sidewalk assessment project in the amount of $128,445.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 25378, accepting the bids and awarding contract to Boris Brothers Construction, Inc. regarding the 2016 sidewalk assessment project. Discussion.
Yes, Your Honor. I think a year ago that there were some people on, was it Indian Creek Road, that had a waiver, a year's waiver, as far as putting in their sidewalks.
It was to fill in the gaps, I think is what you're talking about. Are we talking about filling the gaps on Indian Creek?
No, I think I think there were like 3 properties maybe that weren't.
Deferred. We deferred it.
Good.
I don't think it's been a year yet.
Yeah, I think, I don't.
That was in the winter.
That was the empty lots that planning was following up on.
I felt the bus.
And I think they had till September or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was.
We'll check on those and report back. I think they had till October to get that accomplished, so.
Was it October? Okay.
That's different from
Yes, it is.
this project. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
But for this project though, Dan, you're referring some of these to go ahead on and pulling back on some perhaps next year. Is that, was that the goal?
Yeah, I did check in the transition plan. Next year's amount, I think, is $97,500. We will cut that amount back to make up for this year's program.
Okay. So you won't forget that, right?
Not if you don't.
You won't forget it. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of resolution number 25378, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. At this time, we have another public hearing regarding the 2016 Winslow Road reconstruction project. The public hearing is now open. Presentation? Is there anything on that?
I can give you a report if you would like.
Please, just a little summary
Okay.
for, yes.
On May 31st, the city did receive 6 sealed bids with a low bid from Rachi Construction Company for $994,589.75, or approximately 83% of project estimate. The work will begin no later than July 25th of this year and be completed within 135 working days. As I mentioned the other day, we have set liquidated damages at $750 per day because of the need to make sure that we get the street back open on time. We are doing the project in several phases to allow so the residents can have a closer location to their home where they can park during the construction.
Okay. Is there anyone here who would want to speak in favor of the Winslow Road reconstruction project? Is there anyone who would speak against the project? Okay. The public hearing is now closed.
Yes, Your Honor, I make a motion to approve resolution 25379, accepting bids and awarding contract to Rachi Construction Company regarding the 2016 Winslow Road reconstruction project in the amount of $994,589.75.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 25379, accepting bids and awarding the contract to Rachi Construction Company for the Winslow Road reconstruction project. Discussion?
That penalty, is that about twice what you usually are asking for?
On our smaller projects, we'll use 100 a day, and some of our medium will do 300 a day. It represents what we consider cost to the city and inconvenience to the public. It has to be based on something.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of resolution number 25379 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes.